Let's be clear. Mandela Barnes, to call him a loser, he lost by 1 percentage point to a sitting United States senator. What are people talking about?
I've won an election and then lost 2 elections after that. But at no point has it ever occurred to us that we might want to run again. And then a New York Times article would show up with basically most people anonymously saying, don't run again. And that's exactly what happened yesterday in the New York Times regarding Mandela Barnes, the former lieutenant governor whose name is still out there as a potential candidate for governor next year. Pretty much every other name that's been talked about, those folks have either gotten into the race or out of the race. But the New York Times has an article that is chock full of folks who are hinting that they don't want to see the former lieutenant governor going up against potentially Congressman Tom Tiffany because of how he fell short against Ron Johnson a couple of years back. And like I said, by and large, folks were kind of saying it without saying it. But there was one person who did say it, and that was former Lieutenant Governor Barbara Lawton, who served as lieutenant governor under Jim Doyle, and said of Mandela Barnes's 2022 race, quote, "He proved to us beyond a shadow of a doubt that he can't run hard enough and give us a winning campaign on a statewide basis." That's from Barbara Lawton. And then others saying that if he gets in, do not expect what happened when he ran for U.S. Senate, where the other primary candidates got out and deferred to him, that there will be a primary all the way through the finish line if he were to get in. So again, that's an article in the New York Times about a potential candidate for governor in Wisconsin next year. Let's bring in Earl Ingram now from the What's Going On podcast. With Earl Ingram, head over to civicmedia.us to learn more about that. Earl was most recently the MC for the No Kings rally in Milwaukee last weekend. Earl, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine, but that subject that you just talked about, I got to chime in on that. Mandela Barnes is a longtime friend, a young man whose career I followed and had a connection with. He called me this past Wednesday before this article came out and said to me his intentions on getting into this race. He told me about an interviewer from the New York Times that was going to do this hatchet job on him, and he asked for that interviewer from the New York Times to give me a call. I was awaiting that call. Supposedly, I was supposed to have gotten that call because I was going to say something completely different than what Ms. Lawton and others have said in regards to this race. Let's be clear. Mandela Barnes, to call him a loser, he lost by 1 percentage point to a sitting United States senator. What are people talking about? To say that that's a failure is unbelievably wrong, and to mislead people with this article to say, well, he's not the guy, he can't win a statewide race. Those things are untrue. And when you look at the people who are running, Mandela Barnes, national recognition, that United States Senate race was nip and tuck till the end. If there hadn't been things that were said horribly in the black community by a black talk show host on a different radio station condemning Mandela Barnes, enough blacks would have came out, voted for him. We would be talking about a guy who's a United States senator. So I am outraged that Barbara Lawton and others who are making these assertions that he can't win, absolutely incorrect. He has statewide recognition. He's traveled this state. People are aware of who he is, more so than David Crowley or almost anybody else who's in the race.
I am so glad you brought up the fact that the reporter here, Reed Epstein, has been covering Wisconsin politics for publications before the New York Times and then the New York Times for more than 20 years now. So Reed Epstein's name is familiar in Wisconsin political circles, and I'm frankly shocked that Mandela Barnes referred Reed Epstein to talk to somebody like you. and you heard nothing. He did not reach out to you for a quote or reaction or anything like that. And I'll let Reed Epstein speak for himself, but that speaks volumes to me that he didn't reach out to you.
Well, so as a matter of fact, as late as Monday, I got a call from Mandela Barnes's chief of staff in this campaign asking if I had been contacted by this reporter. And she was surprised to find out that I had not been, because he said he was going to contact me, and I would have spoke up on behalf of Mandela Barnes. He's got a better shot. His name recognition, he enters into the race, and he'll be either leading in the leader and all the people who are in the race. Just absolutely correct.
Yeah, let's be clear about something about 2022. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying Mandela Barnes ran a perfect campaign. He did not. But let's make clear, he did not lose that race so much as Ron Johnson didn't lose, only because the decaying carcass of his campaign was dragged across the finish line by billionaires who spent big after getting huge tax breaks from Ron Johnson, running the most wildly racist ads that we've seen in Wisconsin history. And that provided the closest U.S. Senate race in Wisconsin history. And so for people to just completely write off Mandela Barnes because of the way that he was attacked in the waning days of a campaign, to drag Ron Johnson over the finish line, who has never been above 50% approval in this state, is rather telling.
Outlandish, outrageous, and that's not going to deter Mandela Barnes from getting in the race. I guarantee you.